You are listening to Women's Running Stories, where exceptional women runners share inspirational stories about their running experiences.
I was very proud of grandmas. That's really cool. It's a cool story. First marathon and you win and run at the time, the Olympic standard last year. But I think I'm prouder of the Chicago performance, honestly. Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Lauren Hagans. I am a professional marathoner who I've been around the sport for a little bit, but I feel like I've gotten a whole second career ahead of me because I just started running the marathon and love it. And I just recently finished up my second marathon at Chicago Marathon in October.
Yes, in this episode, I've got Lauren Hagans back on the podcast. Hello and welcome to Women's Running Stories. I am Cherie Louise Turner. I'm the host and producer of this podcast, and I am so happy you're here. Lauren Hagans has been around this sport for a little bit, a couple of decades, and I got to first feature her on the podcast last year, back in March of 2023, telling the story of her experiences at the USATF Half Marathon National Championships, where Lauren earned a place on the podium, coming in a phenomenal second place, having run a really gutsy race. And in this episode, Lauren is focusing on a new chapter of her running career. In all of her years of running, up until last year, 2023, Lauren had yet to take on the marathon. Her debut was at the Grandma's Marathon in Duluth, Minnesota. That was in June of 2023. And she won. She ran an incredible 2 hours, 25 minutes, and 55 seconds. And that is the fourth fastest debut marathon of an American woman ever. Lauren just completed her second marathon in October, and that was Chicago. That's going to be the focus of this episode. And significantly here too is that Chicago was Lauren's first major marathon. As a reminder, the majors are premier international marathons, and they include Chicago, New York, Boston, London, Tokyo, and Berlin. And for next year, the Sydney Marathon is getting added to that lineup. So yeah, Lauren is going to get into the story of Chicago, sharing the reasons why she is even more proud of this performance than of that win at Grandma's. A couple of details before we dive in here. Lauren mentions a few people by first name only in her story, so I'll just clarify who those people are. There's Lindsay, and that is professional runner Lindsay Flanagan. Lauren also mentions her teammate Alex, and that is Alex Masai. All right. So let's get to it. Let's hear Lauren Hagans' marathon story, which is the story about a seasoned pro, Lauren is 38, beginning a new chapter of her professional racing career, going after new PRs and continuing to compete at the highest levels of this sport. It is a really exciting time for Lauren, and it's also a time of some big changes. So let's get to it. Here to tell her story, beginning with how she approaches competition, whatever the distance, is Lauren Hagans.
Yeah, I think my mindset and my strategy for most races is pretty much the same, where I'm trying to, on that day, just get the most out of myself and have the best performance I possibly can. And, that is factoring in meeting myself where I'm at in that moment. So, what I was able to get out of the build, and then just sometimes on the day, things can be a little unpredictable. You don't know what moves other people are going to make, or even how your body is really going to go. And so, yeah, so really the goal, I know Chicago is supposed to be a pretty fast course. It was my first major marathon. So I mostly just wanted to test myself and just see what I could get out of myself on that day. And it ended up resulting in a tiny baby PR And yeah, I think it was, considering like the year that we've had, I was really proud of that performance. And yeah, I really was just trying to just see what I could get out of myself and also have a first major marathon, like, great experience. And I was not disappointed. It was a blast. It's interesting because I'm not a young athlete, like I'm a seasoned pro. But as far as the marathon, it's just so different from like the 5,000, which is what I focused on. And I ran the 800 in college. So, it's just like, it's a very different event and it takes some time to figure it out. And every experience is different. And yeah, I think I actually learned a lot from both races about what gets me feeling the most confident and the best on race day. So for Grandma's Marathon last summer, I had a really good year before that race. Like Alafine Tuliamic and my teammate and I, went 1-2 at the half marathon champs that previous February in Cowtown in Fort Worth. I also had set a 10K road PR of 31:50 something, 53 maybe. And I had come off like a lot of like just shorter distance training, like 10K, even 5K half marathon training. I had a really solid build even before I started my Grandma's marathon block. So those marathon paces felt much easier. And I think like my legs just overall had callousing under them. So it led to Grandma's just feeling so much better because it was like my body was like handling it versus the Chicago build. So after Grandma's, I guess I should go back a little bit, where Grandma's, that went great. And then I took a break and came back and started doing some more half marathon training to train for the Valencia half. And I just remember feeling like really kind of just like my body was off, like leading into that race. And that race in Valencia went well. I think I finished 10th and I was, and it's a pretty deep international field. So I PR'd in that race, but then I was like pretty banged up from it and the long flight afterwards. And that was leading into the Olympic trials build. So I was injured at the Olympic trials. I had a back issue and that just took me, and that was early February of this year. So that took me a long time to figure out how to get healthy and just get over it. And so I basically had started to finally be healthy and start to put together some training by, it took a while. It was probably like April or May. And then I just had a very strange year where I had a freak accident. I was running with my teammate Kellen Taylor, just on like an easy run. And this was in either May or June, but I just rolled my ankle on a pine cone, like randomly. And all of a sudden I was on the ground and in a lot of pain. And I was like, where did this come from? And so I basically like had like a low grade, like sprain of an ankle, but then it just caused a lot of complications. Like it also tweaked my Achilles. And then I was kind of, I was doing like strength stuff on it and then trying to like test it out and train on it, but it just like wasn't going very well. And then it ended up into like a nerve impingement of the nerve. Like I think it's the perineal, like on the outside of your ankle from the like twisting basically that happened when I went down from that pine cone. And then at the same time, I got like really, really sick and had to go to the ER. And so it was just kind of this strange, like just weird, like one thing after another happening where I just wasn't able to like string together any kind of consistent, solid training. And so this was all happening in like June and towards like maybe the middle of July where, yeah. So I just really like, and then I knew I heard I got into Chicago and I really wanted to do it. And I was like, well, I really didn't have like the summer I thought I would. I had to drop out of like 5 different races because of the ankle roll and the sickness and just really like, I didn't want to go and just knew I would not be in any kind of shape to compete. So I really by the time I started to be able to I was healthy and put together workouts, it was already into August. And I think for Chicago, I think I had a 10-week build, but the first workout was 16 by 1 minute. And so that's not really a marathon workout. So it so however you want to look at it, it was I don't know, maybe I had a 7 or 8 week build, specifically, but it was just, it just took me a while to get going because of all these setbacks that were just unexpected. And again, and what's interesting is my Chicago build, once I started to really get into the workouts, I actually had a great build. I had my best ever 10, 12, 14 mile tempos. And then I had some good solid quicker workouts in there too. So it was really interesting. It was I had a great build once I got going, but I still just think I just didn't have that base under me going into Chicago versus grandma's. Okay, fitness wise in Chicago, I was probably in better shape than the time that I ran suggested. But I think I just didn't have the callousing in my legs to be able to handle the 26.2 miles at that pace. And then I also think as far as the structure of the week going into a marathon, I kind of wish that I had done my last workout going into Chicago a day later, because sometimes I feel you get into this rhythm of training and you're okay, I know I'm going to work out Tuesday, Friday, Sunday, or whatever it is. And then a race week, if the race in Chicago was on Sunday, I did my last workout on the Tuesday before. And I think just next time, I think I would like to do it a day closer to the race, just so you keep that neurological stimulation where your muscles and your nerves, your body knows what to expect. I think I actually felt maybe a little heavy-legged and sluggish because of that. In Chicago, I actually had a day where I just really just didn't feel very good. And you have to be able to push through those days. And for some reason, I just felt really heavy-legged and from the beginning. And at Chicago, you have pace groups. And so I had actually a friend that we all know, Matt Yano, who lives in Flagstaff here, who is an elite marathoner himself. He was pacing my pace group. And so from the beginning, we did have we had a group of maybe 5 or 6 professional women there, but there were a few miles, honestly, maybe it was just after 8 miles where I was I kind of felt a little better. And I was okay, maybe it's going to turn around, but then pretty quickly it just didn't. And so I kind of just accepted mentally the fact that this is a day where it's going to be really hard. And you just have to accept that and hang on as long as you can. Yeah, I mean, even though I am young in the marathon, I am a veteran, I am a seasoned pro athlete, and I've had, all kinds of experiences. And I think you just go, I've had races before where I felt horrible and still came out with a PR, still did well. And so I'm just going to put one foot in front of the other and just focus on what I can control. So that's, not panicking, thinking about your form and just being as smooth as possible. So we had a good little group. It was Dom Scott, Aubrey Frenthaway, Jackie Gahn, McKenna Morley, and it ended up somewhere around maybe 14, 15 miles. It was just me and Dom, and then it ended up just being me and Matt. And like I said, just on that day, I actually had a pretty rough day, and I was running 5:32s maybe. And I kind of started to just really feel the heaviness in my legs after about 19 or 20 miles. That last 7 miles was really a grind, but just thinking about little things okay, I know you feel bad, but you've also felt bad in some workouts and come out the other side and had a great day. So just drawing on that experience, also just thinking, honestly, some things like I am in Chicago Marathon. I am very excited to have had the spot on the line. I want to make the most out of it that I can. It's not acceptable to me to just give up on myself in a race, even if I know that maybe what a 223 or 224 is now out of the question. I think a lot of times, like runners too, like your perception of effort feels so much worse than what you're actually running. And I think a lot of runners kind of make that mistake where you're going, I feel so bad. I must be running like, whatever pace, like so much slower than my race goal. So, it's just what does it matter? And you kind of pack it in. But, I think for me too, knowing like I have pretty smooth form. So if I can just try to focus on that instead of just how I'm feeling, it usually ends up better than I think it's going to be. And then again, like I said, like thank goodness for Matt because he was very like positive, even when like I knew I had fallen off slower than what I was running the first like 20 miles of the race. But that was very helpful. I think honestly, like he like didn't leave me, but he was still kind of like pressing a little bit for where I had fallen off to like kind of help me, and then the last mile as well, he was like, it's the last mile. It's the last mile of a workout. You can run this, and then like that was very helpful too. And I don't know, like people that have run Chicago, like it's relatively flat, but like the very last like 400 meters, there is like a quick like pretty steep uphill, and that was just like the worst. So he was just like, you've got a PR as long as you don't give up, and then it was great. I think most athletes, like you cross the finish line and hardly anyone is like, that is, you're always kind of hungry for more. So I think I crossed the finish line and was like relieved to see that, I had run even a tiny PR. But I think I was kind of like mixed feelings, like really proud of myself, but also like, dang, like I was really, hoping for a little for faster. But then there was also immediately in front of me, like Emma Bates and Lindsay. And I basically, we said something to each other like, wow, we're all so amazing, something like that. So I feel like at the end of these races, like people are just like happy and excited for each other. And just because you know how hard it is and how hard we all work. With the marathon, I think one thing that I cued in really early on, and this is from, I got this from Kellen, for grandmas, was like, you just have to wrap your mind around it and accept the fact that you're going to be out there for a long time and there are going to be different patches and you're going to like, maybe like certain parts of the race are going to feel better than others. And you just have to ride the waves and let it pass and then just accept it. Because if your mind accepts it, your body will follow more easily. And I think it is interesting that like my grandmas on my Chicago were night and day. Like I had no rough patches in grandmas. And I was kind of like, my first initial thought was like, this isn't hard. And then I thought, you know what, that could backfire on you when you get into a race where it is hard, because you had this like golden experience that's so rare for a first marathon. And then there's inevitably going to be one where you feel horrible. And that was Chicago. So it was like definitely like night and day, but then I ended up like actually PRing. So to me, that is like what I'm proud of. It was like I handled like the adversity the best I could. And it also makes me excited for the future and the next marathon I run, and just like feeling like, okay, like it's not what you wanted, but I know that even though you're, an older athlete, you like that to me says that there's more in there and there's more in the tank, and that should be exciting. It's like, oh, I think I'm right. I think like I can definitely run faster. And I think that's really cool. Like I'm 38 years old. Like I feel like, like it's cool to like be on the older end of people competing in the sport and like still like excited and motivated and still like running at a high level. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's very cool, but Lauren will be navigating some big changes as her marathon journey continues to unfold.
Yeah, that is kind of where we're at. I will add, not going to be with NAZ and Hoka in 2025. So that'll also be like a very interesting new chapter. And yeah, so as of now, I'm still training with the team until Houston, and then we're going to be figuring out next steps. And so, it's been a great 5 years, but yeah, I'm looking forward to what's in the future.
I am excited to see what the future holds for Lauren Hagans. Lauren's small PR on a rough day put her in 13th place overall at the Chicago Marathon, and she was the 5th American. What an incredible result. No doubt, Lauren's got more great performances ahead in the marathon, and she will be a terrific asset to the savvy sponsor or team that picks her up. Runners like Lauren and her NAZ distance and marathon teammates are such valuable, relevant, and inspirational professional runners. Those teammates include well-known pros Alafine Tillamook, Kellen Taylor, and Stephanie Bruce, and at age 35, Alafine is the youngest among them. It's an exciting new era of women's distance running where women like these are pushing the boundaries of what's possible. They're showing how long women can continue to get faster and compete at the highest levels of the sport while navigating full adult lives, including motherhood. Like Lauren said, it's pretty cool. A big thank you to Lauren Hagans for coming back on the podcast and sharing her story. Thank you so much, Lauren. I am looking forward to what's ahead, and one thing I know that's coming up next for Lauren is that she will be racing the Houston Half Marathon in January. I will for sure be cheering her on, and you can join me. You can keep up with what Lauren is up to by following her on social media. Please look to the show notes where you can find a link to her Instagram account. And that does bring us to the end of this episode. Thank you once again so much for being here. That is going to do it for me for this week. I am Cherie Louise Turner. I am the host and producer of Women's Running Stories. And until next Tuesday, I do wish you healthy, joyful strides forward. Women's Running. Women's Running Stories.
Welcome to Easy Conversations, a podcast about covering the incredible human ability to overcoming adversity. I am Furkan Dania. I am a therapist and mental health advocate. Each week, my objective is to sit down with a guest and share their story of how they were able to find meaning and purpose through their adversity. These are conversations that we have deemed to be difficult, but they don't have to. Together, we can find a shared understanding. This is a podcast for everyone.